Okay, let's jump right into this. We're talking about the Spanish Inquisition.
Right.
And I think for most people, the name brings up these images of, just darkness and fear.
It does. But it's so much more useful to think of it as a government organization.
A system.
A highly structured, very powerful system. And its main goal wasn't just about religion, it was about creating political unity.
Which is how it became this incredibly powerful and, frankly, fear-inducing tool that lasted for centuries.
Exactly. And that's what we want to break down today. The mechanics of it, why it started, who was really in charge, and how its secret rules and procedures affected millions of people.
So let's go back to the very beginning. We're talking 1478, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella.
And you have to remember, Spain wasn't really one country yet.
It was a collection of kingdoms.
A collection of kingdoms. You had Castile, you had Aragon, and they all had their own laws, their own customs. The monarchy needed something to bind it all together.
And they landed on religion.
Yes. The idea was if they could enforce one single faith Catholicism, they could create a single loyalty. A loyalty to them, to the crown.
And this is the really critical point, isn't it? This Inquisition was different from others in Europe.
Oh, completely different. They got permission from the Pope, sure, but it was controlled, funded, and run directly by the Spanish monarchy.
Not by local bishops or the church.
No, which made it a political tool. It was basically a parallel legal system that answered only to the king and queen. It was a ruthless but really smart political move.
So who was the person running this whole machine?
That was the Grand Inquisitor. This person was appointed by the monarchs, and they had immense power over the entire organization.
And there's one name everyone knows, Tomás de
Torquemada. He was more than just a priest. He was a brilliant administrator. His job was to create the rule book, the strict, systematic procedures that every single court in every town had to follow.
So he standardized it.
He standardized everything. And that centralization of power was key. It allowed the crown to bypass all the old local power structures.
Okay, so they have this system in place. How did they actually roll it out? How did they start creating that atmosphere of fear in a regular town?
It started with a very public ceremony. The inquisitors would arrive, and their first act was to read something called the Edict of Grace.
The Edict of Grace? That sounds surprisingly gentle.
It sounds gentle, but it was incredibly strategic. First, it would list all the forbidden religious practices they were looking for.
Like a checklist of heresies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And second, it gave everyone a short window, maybe 30 or 40 days, to come forward and confess their own sins. If you confess then, you'd usually get a lighter punishment.
But that's not the part that really created the fear, is it?
No. The really chilling part was that the inquisitors actively encouraged people to report on their neighbors, on their family members, anyone they suspected of heresy.
So they turned citizens into spies for the state.
They did. And you can imagine what that does to a community. It just destroys trust. Everyone becomes a potential accuser and a potential suspect.
So once that grace period was over and they had their list of names, the arrests would begin.
And they were sudden. You'd be taken away to a special prison run by the Inquisition, completely cut off from the world.
And this is where the financial part kicks in, which is just brutal.
It is. The moment you were arrested, the court seized all of your property, your house, your money, your business, everything.
And that wasn't a punishment yet. It was to pay for your own trial and jail time.
That's right. So your family was financially ruined before you were even found guilty of anything. And even if you were later acquitted, getting that property back was almost impossible. The system basically paid for itself.
And what was life like inside those prisons?
It was designed to break you. We're talking harsh conditions, often complete silence, total isolation. And you could wait for months, sometimes even a year, before your first hearing.
The isolation was a tactic then.
A very effective psychological tactic. You can't prepare defense, you can't talk to witnesses. You're just alone with your thoughts, getting worn down, getting ready to confess.
And when the questioning finally starts, it happens in total secret.
Total secret. You'd have to swear an oath to tell the truth, but then comes the truly cruel part.
They wouldn't tell you the charges.
They almost never told you the specific charges. They would just ask you to search your soul and guess why you had been arrested.
That's just an impossible situation.
It is, because if you deny everything, they see you as stubborn and dishonest. And the evidence against you, it came from witnesses whose names were always kept secret.
So you could be defending yourself against a business rival or an angry neighbor, and you would never even know.
You would never know. The entire legal process wasn't about finding the truth. It was about getting one thing: a confession.
Even the lawyers they gave you were basically working for the court.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Their job was usually to advise the prisoner that confessing was the best option.
But what if someone didn't confess? What if they held out?
Well, if the court felt the evidence was strong but they couldn't get that confession, they could use judicial torture.
Which sounds horrifying, but you're saying this wasn't unique to the Inquisition.
No, it's important to understand that. It was, unfortunately, a standard legal tool in many parts of Europe at the time. A terrible one, but standard.
And they had rules for it. It was very bureaucratic.
Incredibly bureaucratic. A doctor had to be there to make sure the person didn't die. Because, a dead person can't confess.
Of course.
And a scribe had to be there to write down every single word, every groan. It created this detailed paper trail to justify what they were doing.
And what were the methods they used?
They focused on pain that didn't necessarily leave permanent marks. Things like the garrucha, where they'd stretch your body by your wrists, or the toca, the water torture, which simulates drowning.
And people would confess to anything just to make it stop.
Many did. But here's another twist in the system. That confession wasn't automatically accepted.
What do you mean?
You had to be taken back to your cell, and then later you had to repeat the confession in court, voluntarily, without any torture.
And if you took it back?
Then the process could start all over again. The system was designed so that once you were in it, it was almost impossible to get out.
So once the trial is over, the judges decide the sentence. What kind of punishments are we talking about?
They varied a lot. If the evidence was really weak, you might be acquitted. But that was rare. More common were things like public penance, fasting, prayers, that sort of thing.
And there was a way to publicly shame people, too, wasn't there?
Yes, the San Benito. It was a yellow garment you were forced to wear in public, sometimes for years, sometimes for the rest of your life. It marked you as a former heretic, an outcast.
And for more serious cases?
Long prison sentences or losing all your property forever. The worst punishment, of course, was for people who refused to repent. They were handed over to the state to be executed, usually by being burned at the stake.
And these sentences weren't just read in a quiet room. They were part of a huge public event.
A massive public event, the auto de fe. It literally means act of faith.
But it was more like political theater?
Oh, absolutely. It was pure theater, designed to show everyone the power of the monarchy and the church. They'd hold it in the main town square, and it could last all day.
Who would go to something like this?
Everybody. High-ranking officials, priests, even royalty sometimes. The prisoners would be marched through the streets in this long, slow parade, and their sentences would be read out loud for the giant crowd to hear. It was an unforgettable warning.
So who was the system actually targeting?
Initially, it was overwhelmingly focused on conversos and moriscos.
So people from Jewish and Muslim families who had converted to Christianity.
Exactly. The Inquisition was obsessed with the idea they were practicing their old religions in secret. Later on, they also used it to stamp out any new Protestant ideas that were starting to spread.
And this had a huge economic impact, didn't it?
A huge negative impact. Many of these targeted communities included successful merchants, skilled workers, and financiers.
So you're taking the most productive people.
You're taking them out of the economy and seizing all their money and assets. That money then funded the Inquisition itself. It created this awful incentive to target the wealthy. Over time, it really damaged Spain's economy.
And the system didn't just stay in Spain?
No. As Spain built its global empire, the Inquisition went with it. They set up courts in the Americas, in Lima, in Mexico City, and in parts of Europe that Spain controlled.
But a system like this can't last forever. What started to make it fade away?
Well, by the 1700s, new ideas were spreading across Europe. We call it the Enlightenment.
Ideas about reason and science and personal freedom.
Right. And suddenly, a system based on secret trials and torture started to look, well, barbaric and old-fashioned. The Spanish government itself started to see it as a liability, making Spain look backwards.
So it just sort of slowly lost its power.
It did. It was weakened, then briefly abolished, then brought back, before it was finally ended for good in 1834. By that point, it had lost all its authority.
So after nearly 4 centuries, it was over.
Yes. It began as this brilliant, if terrifying, tool for political unity, and it worked for a very long time, using secrecy and fear to maintain control.
It's just such a powerful lesson in what happens when a government gets the power to seize property and turn citizens against each other.
It is. But the most amazing thing to me is the records.
The records the scribes kept.
Yes. They wrote down everything, every question, every answer, every procedure. And because of that meticulous bureaucratic record keeping, historians today have this unbelievable window into how a system of state-sponsored terror actually works.
That legacy of forced documentation gives us a unique look into the past.
It makes you wonder what other parts of history are just lost forever because nobody was there, forced to write it all down.
Good luck with your studies.